Hello! So this month's study group challenge is to make a wall hanging, which pretty much means that I can make whatever I want. So I wanted to take this as an opportunity to make something special for my family. We've been spending the last year together kind of waiting out the pandemic, and during this time trapped at home in Florida, we've made a ton of things out of yarn, which means we have a ton of yarn scraps. This isn't even a fraction of it. You might even recognize some of these scraps from projects in my other YouTube videos. I save all of my yarn scraps because I feel really bad throwing away such fun colors and textures, and I know that I can definitely find a way to repurpose them in other projects. This is actually my last week in Florida before I return to New York City, so I figured let's make something out of all of these yarn scraps to commemorate this whole year. So I'm not really going into this project with any kind of plan, I'm just kind of letting the scraps dictate what I'm doing. But I did decide ahead of time that I wanted to start with finger fringes, so I'm going to show you how I tie that up and how I prepare that. So I have my apron bar here in my lap, and what I want to do is tie my warp strings to the bar in tiny little groupings based on how wide I want my fringes to be. So that's going to be one of my finger fringes. And now I just kind of tie up the rest of them based on how I want it to look. So now that all of my warp threads are tied up into little bunches, I'm pretty much going to treat every single one of these groups kind of like they're their own tiny little weavings. So you can kind of see now that beading it doesn't really work that well at this stage, so it definitely helps to have some kind of tapestry comb or a fork or anything of the sorts that you can use to go in and just pack down every single one of these little guys. Like I said before, I didn't really go into this weaving with any kind of plan, so I just decided to turn on the camera, start weaving, and see what the project wanted to become. Then try to explain it later. This is kind of a messy time lapse, but I hope you can still get the gist of what I'm doing. I treated each finger fringe like they were their own tiny little weavings, and using my hands, I started building them up one by one with the scrap yarns. I then decided that I wanted to join some of the smaller weavings together, and also split some of the larger ones apart, which would create a giant hand-woven web. I'll bring you in a bit closer and explain exactly how I did this. So let's say I want to join this white square with this kind of yellowy greeny one. What I need to do is first make sure that they're even in height. So I'm going to do that by just adding a couple rows of weaving to the top of this white square. So I have a yarn scrap, and I'm just gonna pass it through. So basically what I decided I'm gonna do is I'm gonna join this rectangle to this rectangle, but not join the whole thing, only a part of it. So I've passed this through. I'm gonna pass this through again, but only as far as I would like my rectangle to be wide. Basically, I switch and pack. See, now I have that little bridge that's gonna serve as a join, and then I just pass this back. So you can see I have a whole new shape. I turned this slit into a hole, and then I'm creating a new slit right here. So basically I just need to fill in this portion with some more scrap yarn. And something you'll notice that I'm doing is that I really want to emphasize this gap and this gap. So I'm tugging in my edges a little more than you normally would. The rest of this weaving is basically just building on this idea of splitting and joining these skinny weavings. And I continued weaving like this until I was satisfied with the length of my tapestry. And because I'm trying to use up my scrap stash, I don't want to end up with a lot of waste from this project. So what I've been doing is picking a color and then using it up until it's all gone. In other words, I'm letting the scraps decide when I change colors. If you're a weaver and you're looking for a fun way to use up your yarn scraps, I definitely recommend giving this technique a try. This process is very, very slow, but once you get into the groove of it, it's actually really fun and kind of addicting. There's something so exciting about incorporating a piece of scrap yarn and then digging through the giant pile of scraps to find the next perfect piece. Because this project was meant to be a memory of the past year of weaving with my mom and sister, I invited them to join in and weave with me. In this clip, you'll see my sister adding in an adorable little clasp weft section, which is now one of my favorite parts of this weaving. In this clip, you'll see my mom adding in a lot of bold texture with some chunky yarns and wool roving. I really like that we all added in the scraps that most spoke to us, and we incorporated our own, totally unique design elements. The three of us sat around the loom and took turns adding to this project over the course of a few days, which was such a fun experience to share together, and it made this project that much more special. Even my dad joined in. He cut a piece of fallen palm tree for us so we could hang the finished tapestry on the wall. And here's how our scrappy tapestry, or Scrapestry, turned out. I really, really love this piece, and I think it's a perfect representation of this past year. I love that every row of weaving reminds me of a fun, creative adventure. I gifted the tapestry to my parents to hang on their wall, so whenever we all reunite again, it'll be there to remind us of these crazy times that we spent together. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more weaving videos.